I did now.
All right, well, we'll get started. Welcome, everybody, to today's session. This is the second session in our Enhancing the Patient Experience with Bob Prentice. Today's topic is building healthy relationships. And it was interesting that, Bob, yesterday I was reading a survey that was done of patients across the different generations. And one of the comments in the survey was that patients want a personal connection with their healthcare providers with whom they ideally will maintain relationships over the long term. And that patients want to, when they feel like they're a number to the physician and the practice and they don't feel like a person, then, there's a better chance that they might leave that practice and go to somebody else. So I think your topic today is going to be very timely. So with that, go ahead and take it away.
Excellent. And thank you, Jeff. And you're spot on with your comments here, and from the continually the discoveries that we're making that, patient care and building these healthy relationships are the core of literally any business or chiropractic practice. And as I was preparing for this session, first of all, I have to say, Jeff, thank you for coordinating these events for us, so that we can share these ideas. Now, keep in mind, everybody, that I could literally talk for hours on this subject, and we've only got like 30 minutes here today. And so we're only going to just plant some seeds and share some ideas and do the best we can with the time that we have over this working lunch hour today. And as I was preparing, I thought, well, there's so much to share. What would be some awesome nuggets? And I was reflecting back to one of my favorite areas, and it's the human behaviors. First of all, to establish our resources today, human behaviors, there's three basic types of human behaviors. There's what some people refer to as passive behavior. These are the behaviors where people are kind of shy. They don't move out of themselves very often. They're very often locked into comfort zones. They have a tendency to have the attitude, well, I'll let you win and I'll lose in this relationship. That's a passive form of behavior. And I admit there's times in my life that I've taken that path of passivity and I've had that attitude. I'll let you win and I'll lose, and I guess que sera, sera. Well, what happens oftentimes, there are people who have another form of behavior, and it's what oftentimes we refer to as aggressive behavior. You might know people like this. They have the attitude of, I'm going to win, you're going to lose, and I don't really care. They're aggressive in nature. They're aggressive in their speech. They're aggressive in their behaviors. And boy, I certainly don't want to be an aggressive individual or even be known as an aggressive person. But there is another type of behavior that I want to share and discuss with everybody today as we lay our foundation, and that's what I like to refer to as assertive behavior. Now, assertive behavior, and I need to clarify this, is kind of, you might have heard the win-win situations. Well, you got to understand that in a true form of assertive behavior, the attitude is, I want you to win, and as a result of you winning, I, as a human being, have that same basic right. So it's win and then I win. And some people confuse that with, well, I'll win and let you win too, but that's not the attitude. We got to always be focusing on the other person. Now, I aspire to be assertive in my daily human relationships, and this is the challenge I like to throw down to people, to create these win-wins in our daily life. But oftentimes what holds us back is our habits. If we're constantly aggressive with people, that's going to become a habit. If you're passive in your behaviors, that'll become a habit. And just like being assertive, that too can become a habit, creating these win-win situations. I was reflecting back at a time several years ago that I had to be assertive in my communications and relationship building. And my wife and I had bought a brand new car. And she took it to the grocery store that evening, and someone had pushed a shopping cart literally into the back of the car, or something happened and it just smashed out the tail end of the car. I went into the grocery store and said, "Hey, it looks like someone pushed a shopping cart into the car." And they said, "Oh, hey, that's your problem. That's not ours." And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. It was on your property and your shopping cart and all of this. And so I went back to the office, and I was telling everybody at the office about this. And they said, "No, that's your problem. That's your problem. That's not the grocery store's fault." And so anyway, I thought, well, I'm going to just kind of pursue this a little bit more. And I went in asking some more questions and found out that I really wasn't talking to the right people. So I kept going up the line, and finally, through my assertive questioning and assertive behaviors, not being angry or aggressive in any way, I just continued to gently get to the answers. And ultimately, the boss, he pulls out a shopping cart accident form and has me fill out the form. They actually had a form for it. And ultimately, we got the car repaired. But I have a feeling that if I would have, first of all, been passive, this wouldn't have happened. If I would have been aggressive, the positive result wouldn't have happened. And so I know in my core that I need to be assertive as I'm building relationships with people. And the other two just don't work. Now, there are some basic assertive rights. Now, you need to understand that everybody has these rights. They don't just belong to me. They belong to everybody. And so the people that you're dealing with, you have to remind yourself that they have these basic rights also. You can see there's a list of them here. And my goal is to challenge you to take one or two of these and start applying them every day in your life, and then watch what dramatically begins to take place. For example, the first one, you have a right to refuse requests and to say no without feeling selfish or guilty in any way whatsoever. A lot of people have a hard time saying no, but to say no and not feel guilty about it, that is truly something special. And you have that right. But the people you're dealing with, remember, have that very same basic right also. You have the right to be treated with respect and dignity and not be intimidated or manipulated. Everybody has that basic right. We'll jump around here a little bit. You have a right to delay your answer. I love that one. People ask me a question. I go, that's a great question. Let me think about that for a little bit, and I'll get back to you shortly with an answer. That's probably one of the best things I've got sunk into my core in my dealings with people. You have a right not to have everyone like you all the time. Now, I'm a big believer in building relationships, and I know not everybody likes Bob. And I had to come to the point in my life where, I had to be okay with that. And that helps me be even more assertive. You have a right to make mistakes. People in general have that right. We forget that. And you don't have to make excuses or subject yourself to any self-condemnation in that process. So we have a right to make mistakes, and I make them, and it's okay to make mistakes. You have a right to change your mind. This is a good one. When I found out that I have a right to change my mind and not feel guilty about it, boy, it was like all kinds of bells went off in my life with that. And so as I apply these assertive rights in dealing with people, I noticed something began to change in my life. I was becoming more confident. I was becoming more enthusiastic. I noticed my relationships were getting richer and healthier and happier. In fact, I would go to the toughest people in my life where I maybe even had challenges in relationships, and I'd go practice these rights. If I seen them struggling and having a hard time saying no, I would actually help them in that process of saying, well, just say no to me then. And so I would bring them along in that relationship. And then ultimately over time, good things would come from that attitude. Here's another one. I have to share this with you a little bit today. You have a right to ask for information or assistance without feeling inadequate or inferior. Now, it's important that when you're building a relationship with somebody and you start asking the tougher questions, or maybe the more sensitive questions, or even the maybe more personal types of questions, and you're really trying to be assertive with them, you want them to win, you want to win, it's vital that we gain permission from people. We gain their permission. We ask them, may I have your permission? I'm going to ask you some really tough questions, and, I'd really appreciate your answer. So I kind of set the stage, I guess you might say. I remind myself that I have the right to ask, they have the right to say no. And with that in mind, that will help lay that foundation. And then, like I say, when you're asking permission, it shows respect, it gives respect. It oftentimes I'll get a yes or a positive response. About 99% of the time when I ask permission, I get that positive response. And so I hate to use the word tool, but it's a resource of simply just in your toolbox you take with you in relationship building. Gaining people's permission will never do you wrong in any application. So gain people's permission, especially on those sensitive, those personal, or those really super tough questions. That's an assertive thing to do in building healthy relationships. Years ago, Dale Carnegie, he wrote the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I encourage everybody to read this book. Their basic principles actually go back to the Bible, frankly, is where Dale Carnegie got them from. And then he just kind of put them in generic terms for we human beings to assimilate into our lives. But the basic principles of human relations are within that book and, of course, many others. But I've boiled it down to some of my favorite principles that I like to apply in my daily processes. And of course, that's having a smile on your face and maintaining that friendly, accessible demeanor in my daily life. I want to show positivity. I want to show that positive attitude. But I got to tell you a story one time on Bob here from years ago. I was walking down the street one day, and I was concentrating really hard on my next project ahead. And as I was walking down the street, I was actually looking down at the ground. And I don't know why. Maybe it was just a habit, but I was looking down as I was walking down the street. Maybe I was watching out for cracks or whatever. I don't know. But as I was doing this, somebody observed that behavior. People are always watching. And in fact, it got back to one of my clients. It happened to be a dental office that I was working with out in Rapid City. And Dr. Cunningham, he called me. He says, "Hey, Bob, I need to take you to lunch." And I said, "Okay." And so we went to lunch. And he goes, "There's something I got to talk to you about," he said, "Bob." And he said, "One of my employees seen you walking down the street the other day. And as you were walking down the street, you were hanging your head down. You were looking down on the ground." And I thought, okay. And he said, it looks like, Mr. Positive kind of guy, you should be looking up and you should be holding your head up high. And I never forgot that advice. It was I was so glad that he was assertive with me and didn't take a passive role. And he brought that to my attention. And it reminds me of another story. My wife was working at a restaurant years ago in Great Falls, and her boss took her aside and said, "Hey, Vicki, you're not smiling as you do your job." And Vicki thought, "Well, I thought I was smiling." He says, "No, you're not smiling at all." And the customers are wondering what's the matter. Well, what they finally concluded was she was concentrating so hard on doing a good job, she simply forgot to smile. And so this is a conscious decision we have to make. We need to remind each other around the office that, hey, are we smiling? Are you smiling today? Make sure when that patient comes in, we're smiling, because that's going to show that you have that friendly and that accessible demeanor. And so I have smiley faces up on my computer screens, or if I'm making a phone call, I want to make sure I actually have a mirror by my phone on my desk that I look in that mirror when I'm talking on the phone to make sure that my smile, my joy, my happiness is coming through that phone call. Be an encourager. This is a great principle. Days where I'm struggling in my attitudes, I pick up the phone and I just start calling people and encouraging them. People that I know, customers that I have. Be an encourager of others. I tell you, that's a great way to bring out the best not only in others, but in yourself. When you're an encourager of others, it builds your attitudes about yourself. And you got to be kind of assertive when you do that. You can't be passive and be an encourager. You have to be an assertive individual if you're going to stretch out of your comfort zone and you're going to encourage someone else in their day or in their life. Find something, look into their character, look into their personhood, look into their behaviors, find that nugget. Maybe as they're leaving the practice or the office that day, you say, hey, Betty, there's been something I've been meaning to mention to you. And you bring them back in, you say, hey, Betty, I got to tell you this. You always got this smile on your face, and it's really meant a lot to me. You got to tell them why you're telling them this. Otherwise, they'll think you're kind of blowing smoke up their kazoo. But show them some evidence or tell them some evidence as to why you're paying them that compliment, and they'll receive that sincerely. You have to be assertive to do that. To apply these human relations principles, you need to be assertive. You need to put yourself out there a little bit. And as you do this, you generate in yourself this natural curiosity. I think this is important for us to have this genuine and sincere attitude of curiosity about people. And so I always have 1 or 2 or 3 questions I can ask people, like, have they traveled anywhere recently, or do they have any vacation plans coming up? Or I might ask, what's the most enjoyable part of your job? Or how did you get into the kind of work that you do right now? So I'll have 2 or 3 questions that'll kind of fuel that curiosity, and they'll receive that like, wow, they really care about me. So what I would do if I was in your position and I had patients coming into the office and I knew my 2 o'clock patient, let's call her Betty, and Betty was coming in, I'd be prepared to ask Betty a question I've never asked before, something that I'm kind of curious about Betty. And I will be prepared to ask her that question. And then as that's happening, she's going to start to feel that, well, they really do care about me as a human being. Showing interest in them as a human being. Finding out about what their hobbies are, talking about them, about their desires in life, their visions for their future. This shows this natural enthusiasm we talked about at the last session. And as we apply that spark of enthusiasm, it ignites something. You can go back to the last session that we had on remembering names and recalling names. And the joy that comes from being able to recall somebody's name, that sparks that enthusiasm in us. And speaking of that, anybody have any reports of utilizing some of the tools that we shared from Ira Brahms or the Acme tool in recalling and remembering names? Does anybody online today have any success stories in the name remembering assignment? I'm just kind of curious.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Wayne. Good to see you.
So definitely one is sometimes we have, like you talked before about saying, I never remember names. I stopped doing that. So that was good.
Good job. Good job.
And have done a better job. And I need to continue to focus on the patient's name when they come in the office and then repeating their name. So I'm getting better at that.
Good for you.
It was a good reminder to have the meeting today in order to again, like you're reminding us right now, that we need to get busy on that. So
excellent, Wayne. I appreciate that report. Anybody else? Any successes in recalling or remembering names, either on or off the job? Okay. All righty. Let me just encourage you to keep practicing that. And it's a way to kind of, as you're building that relationship and you're recalling their names and you're applying some of these other principles like being an encourager and then gently using their name. Just don't overuse it because that's going to be seeming up here phony to them. But just gently, occasionally use their name. And as you're visiting with them, showing that curiosity about them, sprinkle it in a little bit on that conversation. In building healthy relationships also, we need to sometimes dramatize our ideas. And whether it's through a story or something that we do that's kind of silly or out of our norm a little bit, we need to dramatize our ideas. My wife came. I got to tell this story on myself. My wife came home from her job the other day, and I was home before her, and so I had supper on, and I poured her a glass of wine, and I put a tie on, just a tie. And I had a glass of wine for her, and I met her at the door, and with my tie and my glass of wine for her. And she laughed, of course, and we had a great chuckle over all that. But it was my point of dramatizing my ideas. I wanted to have a really fun night with her, and I know she's been working really hard, and it was on Friday evening, and it was just her and I, and it was a way to build a healthier relationship. So I just dramatized my ideas a little bit, and we still talk and laugh about it here just Friday night. But that's the power of building healthy relationships. And planting seeds of ideas. I'm a big seed planter, and it's a human relations principle. And so I plant seeds of ideas in people's life. I encourage you to do that, and to have really a great experience with building human and healthy human relationships is to create, develop, and arouse in people an eager want. And so I do that through my creativity. I encourage people to get creative, be innovative, kind of get out of your comfort zones. And as we create and develop and arouse in people an eager want to apply the principles or to get out of their comfort zones, that helps everybody win. And that's what I'm after, is those win-win relationships. Now, here's my encouragement for you, is to really focus on the application of these principles, not on the job at first. Go into your personal life. Go into your private life and focus on building healthier relationships there. Go to your children, go to your spouse, go to a friend that you haven't talked with for a while, and take one of these principles and just apply it. And then the next time you connect with them, take another principle and apply it. And then just, every connection, try a different principle with them. That'll help you build a healthier relationship. And as you're having success in your personal and private life, then you can bring these principles back into the workplace, and you're going to have greater success. You really will. There's something about taking them home and taking them into your private life, first of all, whether it's the assertive rights we were talking about earlier or these human relations principles. You'll have much more success if you apply them in your personal life first and then bring them back into your professional or your public life more. Because also, if you can apply them at home, well, that's the best place to apply them. And because, you can't go out into the world and try to have healthy relationships if you don't have healthy relationships at home. It's not being real. And so, I strive. Now, I've not arrived by any stretch of the imagination in the application of these. I have to wake up every day, whether it's my son that I'm working with or my son-in-law or my daughter or one of my grandchildren. I'm thinking, which principle can I apply? For example, with my granddaughter the other day, we were doing some chores. We were unloading some corn for the chickens, and she got a little silly, and I could have been passive, and she kind of, it could have almost been a dangerous situation, and I could have yelled at her, and I didn't do that. I wanted to be assertive with her, and she's only 8 or 9 years old, and so I went up to her and I said, Danielle, honey, I want you to not get hurt, and you're up on the truck, and you could slip easily, and so it's very important that you not mess around right now, and so I had to be assertive with her, and yet I know that there's been times that when kids are screwing around, we can yell, and it's easy to yell and be aggressive. But so, like I say, it's the application in our personal life, in our private life, and then we've earned the right to take it out into the real world, so to speak, and apply them there. You're going to have greater success when you do that. So right now, go down that list of human relations principles and pick one right now that you're going to say, hey, that's mine. Now think of a person that you're going to apply that on in your personal life. Pick one of those, whether you're going to dramatize your ideas more, maybe you're going to just show some interest in them some more, maybe you're going to ask more questions, maybe you're going to simply just start asking permission to ask some questions. I want you to pick one right now and then think about how and who you could apply that principle with right away today, this evening, and start having some success with it. Any questions about the application of this handful of principles here today? Any questions about that?
Bob, this is Jeff, and while we're waiting to see if anybody has any questions, just a comment I would make is that as I hear you go through these human relations principles, the thing that comes to mind as it relates to a chiropractic clinic is that if we want to, not treat everybody like a number, if we want to treat them as individuals, if we want to develop these strong relationships with them, it just seems like we're much better off, focusing on them and not ourselves. And I think generally as human beings, we kind of spend too much time maybe focusing on ourselves and our problems and our issues. But, our patients aren't coming in here to hear about what we have going on. They're here to get better. And so I think these are some really good, really, applicable and really relevant principles that we can all use in the interactions with patients.
Thank you, Jeff, and so confirming. I was going to mention also on the tune in on the listening one, this is important because you guys all know that I love to talk, but I really have to work at listening. So here's what I do. I pretend like I'm a dehydrated sponge, and I'm in the bottom of the sink, all dried up sponge. And so every word they speak to me, I treat as a drip out of the faucet. And I start to absorb each word into my personhood. And it forces me to focus on them, to have eye contact with them. I really kind of tune in, so to speak, my ears and focus, but I treat every word. And then what I do is I play it back to them. As I play it back, it confirms two things. I heard them correctly, and at the same time, it lets them know that we're on the same page and that we're moving in the same direction. So thanks again, Jeff, for that confirmation of the application. Think of all the touch points you have throughout the practice, from the moment they walk in and hit reception to being taken back to one of the rooms. All those touch points, picking up the phone and doing a follow-up call. Hey, how did that treatment work for you? Think of the different touch points that you have and how you could literally apply a different human relations principle on every one of those touch points. If 2 or 3 different staff members have engagement with that patient as they come in, and each of you had a different principle that you were going to apply that day with that patient, someone was going to, just focus more on listening. Someone's going to focus on asking a question or two of this patient. You could, or someone's going to have that little spark of enthusiasm and give them a warm fuzzy or whatever that day. Who's going to step out of their comfort zone? Who's going to not be passive but be assertive and apply the principles? That's where it's going to start really working for you in the practice. So, any other comments or questions today? We just wanted to plant some seeds and give you some encouragement and keep the ball rolling as we build healthy relationships and have that patient care attitude. Okay.
Right.
Bob, excellent again. It's good to see simple tips to keep in front of us and simple deals. I'm sure that everybody in our office is
pretty basic, right?
Saying that I need to maintain a friendly and accessible demeanor and smile more. So that's going to be my goal. And if they can help me and if they can be encouragers to do that, then that would be a good thing. So
yes, absolutely. Excellent. Thanks, Wayne, again. Well, everybody, have a great week. And once again, I'm just a phone call away if I can help in any way whatsoever with just even some encouragement or you're struggling with the application on one of these principles or these attitudes, or even want to have further clarification, give me a jingle, reach out to me, and we'll have a little chat. I'd be thrilled to help you accomplish even greater goals in your life and in your practice. Thanks, Jeff, once again for putting this together for us all today.
You're welcome, and we'll see everybody on Tuesday the 13th of March for the Selling Our Ideas, Treatment Plans, and Services session. So have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.